There is a silence that burns hotter than any scream, and Jesus walked straight into it. 40 days, 40 nights, no food, no distractions, only sand, stone, and the unbearable weight of being completely alone with what you truly are. Most people run from this their entire lives, because the desert is not just a geographical place. The desert is that moment when all your masks fall away, when there is no one left to impress, when your achievements mean nothing, when even your prayers seem to echo in the void. And that is exactly where transformation begins. Jesus did not go into the desert by accident. He was led by the Spirit, guided, driven to the only place where the truth cannot be avoided, where you cannot pretend, negotiate, or postpone. The desert is brutal because it removes everything that is non-essential. Think about your life right now. How many layers of noise do you carry? How many internal voices are fighting for attention? How many identities do you wear depending on who is looking? The desert strips all of that away. In the first few days you feel hunger. Physical hunger, yes, but primarily a hunger to return to known comfort, a hunger to be who you used to be, a hunger for the old certainties. But Jesus stayed. And here is the part nobody told you. The 40 days were not a trial imposed by God to test if Jesus was strong enough. They were an alchemical process, a deliberate burning away of everything that was false to reveal what was true. The thirst in the desert is not just a lack of water. It is the thirst of the soul that finally admits, I don't know who I am without all these things. And when you reach that point, when the existential thirst burns so much you can no longer pretend, something shifts. The temptations arrived. Of course they did. Turn these stones into bread. Translate that. Use your power to escape the challenge. Use your abilities to avoid feeling what needs to be felt. Bypass the process. How many times a day do you do exactly that? You feel anxiety and you grab your phone. You feel emptiness and you buy something. You feel fear and you distract yourself with work. You are turning stones into bread constantly, so you don't have to stay in the desert. Jesus said no, because he understood something that changes everything. Peace is not in escaping the desert. Peace is in crossing it. Throw yourself down from this pinnacle. Translate again. Test God. Force a response. Demand certainty before you trust. You have done this too. You have created conditions. If God gives me that job, then I'll believe. If that person comes back, then I'll trust. If I feel peace first, then I'll take the step. But peace doesn't work that way. Peace doesn't come before you enter the desert. It emerges through it. Peace is not the absence of thirst. It is learning to exist while the thirst is still there. Jesus said no again, and then came the final temptation. All the kingdoms of the world can be yours. Just bow down. This is not about demons with horns. This is about that voice whispering, you can have everything you desire, just abandon who you really are. Trade your essence for approval. Trade your truth for security. Trade your desert for an empty crown. How many empty crowns have you worn? Jesus said no for the third time. And here is the secret that changes absolutely everything. He didn't say no because he was holy. He said no because he had already discovered something in the desert that was infinitely more valuable than bread, certainties, or kingdoms. He discovered presence. Presence is not a nice concept for motivational posters. Presence is what is left when you stop running. It is what emerges when you finally sit down in the middle of the thirst, the silence, the emptiness, and you do not try to fix anything. The 40 days were not about resisting evil. They were about unlearning dependence on everything external. Because the peace most people seek is always conditional. I will be happy when I get that. I will have peace when that changes. I will feel complete when I achieve that goal. That is not peace. That is negotiation. And life will always break the agreement. The desert teaches something different. The desert teaches that total peace does not depend on anything changing. It is available now, not because your circumstances have improved, but because you have stopped demanding that they be different for you to start living. Jesus left the desert a different person, not because he acquired something, but because he lost everything that was not him. Think about this. He entered hungry and left full. He entered alone and left connected to everything. He entered empty and left overflowing. How? Because he stayed long enough for the illusion to die. The illusion that you are your achievements, the illusion that you are your doubts, the illusion that you need external validation to be whole. The desert kills these illusions slowly. And it hurts. It is supposed to hurt. But on the other side, freedom. True freedom is not being able to do whatever you want. It is needing nothing to be at peace. It is looking at the desert and no longer feeling fear because you have already been there and discovered that you survived. More than that, you discovered that you flourished. Now here is what no one tells you about the 40 days. They are not just about Jesus 2,000 years ago. They are about you now. You have your own desert waiting. It might be a relationship breakup that forced you to question everything. It might be a professional crisis that destroyed your identity. It might be a loss that left you completely empty. Or it might be more subtle, that silence between thoughts that you immediately fill with distractions, that emptiness you never let exist long enough to reveal what it truly is. The 40 days are a metaphor for any moment when life strips you of everything familiar and leaves you face to face with the only question that matters. Who am I when I am none of this? And the answer, the true answer, does not come in the first days. It does not come when you are still negotiating. It does not come when you are still trying to turn stones into bread. It comes when you finally stop fighting the desert and start listening to it. Because the desert is not your enemy. It never was. The desert is the only place honest enough to show you what has always been there beneath all the layers of fear, performance, and need for control. Jesus found that. You can too. But there is a cost. The cost is stopping the running, stopping filling every silence, stopping seeking peace in approval, stopping waiting for someone or something to complete you. Because here is the truth that burns like hot sand under your feet. You are already whole. You always were. You just built so much on top of that truth that you forgot how it feels. The 40 days are about removal, not addition. They are about subtraction, not multiplication. They are about returning to the bone, to the marrow, to the untouched core, and discovering that there, finally, is the peace you sought in 1,000 wrong places. Jesus came out of the desert and began his ministry, but it was not the desert that qualified him. It was the surrender that happened there. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is stopping insisting that life be different from what it is in this exact moment. It is stopping resisting the desert when you are in it. And when you stop resisting, something miraculous happens. The thirst that tortured you, it is still there, but you realize you can exist with it, not against it. The emptiness that scared you, it is still there, but you realize it is not emptiness. It is space. Space to breathe. Space to be. Space to finally rest from the war you waged against yourself your whole life. Jesus' total peace did not come from eliminating challenges. It came from not needing them to be eliminated for him to be okay. This changes everything. Because if peace depends on circumstances, you are never safe. There is always something that can be lost. There is always something that can go wrong. But if peace is rooted in something deeper, in presence, in acceptance, in surrender to what is, then nothing can take it from you. Neither loss, nor failure, nor the desert. So here is the question you need to answer now. What is your desert? What are you avoiding facing? What silence are you constantly filling? What emptiness do you refuse to look in the eye? Because as long as you avoid the desert, total peace remains a distant promise, a beautiful idea, a future goal that depends on everything aligning perfectly. But when you enter the desert, when you finally say yes to the process, yes to the burning, yes to the transformation, everything changes. You stop seeking peace out there. You realize it was always here, hidden beneath the fear, waiting for you to stop running. Jesus spent 40 days. Maybe you need less. Maybe you need more. The number does not matter. What matters is the willingness to stay when everything in you wants to flee, to stay when the thirst tightens, to stay when the temptations whisper that there is an easier path. Because there is no easier path to total peace. There is only this path. The path through the desert. The path through the loss of the false self. The path through the death of who you thought you were. And on the other side, you find who you always were. Not an improved version, not a fixed version. The real version, whole, present, free. Jesus came out of the desert and the Spirit was with him. But the Spirit was always there. The difference is that now there was nothing blocking the perception of it. The stones did not turn into bread. The angels did not descend to impress anyone. No kingdom was conquered. And yet everything changed. Because he changed. And when you change internally, when the existential thirst is finally quenched not by answers but by presence, The whole world transforms, not because it is different, because you see differently. You stop seeking salvation in achievements, stop seeking validation in opinions, stop seeking peace in control, and you discover that peace has always been here, quiet, patient, waiting for you to stop screaming long enough to hear it. The desert is not punishment. The desert is a gift. It is the only place where all your escape strategies fail, where all your negotiations expire, where you finally have to face the naked truth. And the naked truth is this: you don't need to be saved. You need to remember who you were before you learned to be afraid, before you learned that you need to be more to be loved, before you learned that the desert is an enemy. Jesus remembered, and in the 40 days every layer of forgetting was burned away. Now it is your turn. You don't have to go to a physical desert. Your desert is any place where you are being invited to let go of control and trust the process. Any place where you are being stripped of the familiar. It might be this moment, this crisis, this loneliness, this emptiness you feel at 3 in the morning. That is your desert. And you have a choice: to run from it once more, or to finally stay. To stay and discover what Jesus discovered. That total peace was never on the other side of the desert. It was inside the desert all along, waiting for you to stop fighting it and start becoming it. Because in the end, the 40 days are not about survival. They are about transmutation. You do not leave the desert as the same person who entered. You cannot. The desert does not allow it. You enter full of fear. You leave full of presence. You enter dependent. You leave free. You enter fragmented. You leave whole. Not because something was added, but because everything that was not you was finally, gloriously burned away. And now you can finally rest. But wait, there is a deeper layer here that needs to be revealed. Because when Eckhart Tolle talks about the 40 days of Jesus, he is not giving a biblical history lesson. He is pointing to something the human mind does constantly, something so automatic that you are probably doing it right now as you listen to this. You are trying to use this story. Use it to feel better. Use it to have hope. Use it to create a narrative that, one day when I finally face my desert, then I will be free. But that is just another form of running. Because the desert is not future. The desert is now. Every time you feel discomfort and immediately seek distraction, that is the desert. Every time you feel emptiness and run to fill it with anything, that is the desert. Every time you catch yourself judging yourself, criticizing, comparing, wishing you were different, that is the desert calling. And what do? You turn stones into bread. You create an escape. You deny the invitation. Jesus did not do that. He stayed. And here is what Tolle realized that changes everything. Jesus did not resist the temptations out of willpower. He simply observed. He observed the desire to turn stones into bread and did not identify with it. He observed the impulse to test God and did not identify with it. He observed the seduction of the kingdoms and did not identify with it. It was not about being strong. It was about being conscious. And consciousness does not fight anything. Consciousness just sees. So let me ask you again, but differently now. What is your desert in this exact moment? Not 10 years from now. Not when life forces you into some dramatic crisis. Now, what feeling are you avoiding feeling now? What truth are you postponing facing now? What part of you is screaming for attention while you keep pretending you don't hear? Because the 40 days are not an extreme experience reserved for spiritual figures. The 40 days happen in micro moments throughout your entire life. Every time you choose presence instead of distraction, that is the desert. Every time you feel anxiety, and instead of running, you just breathe and stay with it, that is the desert. Every time you stop telling your story of suffering and simply feel what is beneath the story, that is the desert. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. You can spend 40 seconds. 40 seconds of total presence can change more than 40 years of spiritual seeking, because spiritual seeking is often just the ego disguised. The ego saying, I need to improve, I need to evolve, I need to achieve enlightenment. But the desert dismantles that ego. The desert whispers, you don't need anything, you just need to stop running from what is. And that terrifies the ego. Because if you don't need to improve, what is the ego going to do? If you are already whole, what is the purpose of all this struggle? Exactly, there is no purpose. And when you realize that, when you truly, viscerally feel that there is no purpose in this constant struggle to be different, something breaks open. The thirst stops. Not because it was quenched, but because you realize that the thirst was just a thought, a mental pattern convincing you that there is something wrong with this moment. Jesus came out of the desert and began to teach. But what did he teach? Not complex philosophies, not elaborate rituals. He taught presence. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Not tomorrow, not when you deserve it, within you now. Do not worry about tomorrow. Why? Because worry is just the mind projecting suffering into the future. It is just the ego refusing the desert of the now. Look at the birds of the air. What do the birds do? They don't negotiate with reality. They don't resist what is. They simply exist. This is not pretty poetry. It is direct instruction from someone who went through the desert and discovered the secret. The secret is not to find peace. The secret is to be peace. And you cannot be peace in the future. You can only be peace now, in this moment, in this breath. Even if that moment includes pain, even if it includes fear, even if it includes the feeling that you are completely lost, because total peace does not mean the absence of discomfort. It means complete presence with the discomfort. Jesus felt hunger in the desert. He did not transcend the hunger. He stayed present with the hunger, and in that presence, the hunger lost its power over him. You can do the same with your anxiety, with your loneliness, with your fear of not being enough, not by fighting it, not by trying to fix it, just by staying present with it. And here is what happens when you stay present long enough with something that scares you. You realize that you are bigger than it, not as a positive affirmation, as a direct experience. Because if you can observe your anxiety, you are not your anxiety. If you can witness your fear, you are not your fear. So who are you? That is the question the desert forces you to answer. And the answer is never conceptual. The answer is a feeling of space, a feeling of vastness, a feeling that there is something in you that has never been touched by any of your personal dramas. Jesus found that. Tolle points to that. But no one can give that to you. Because that is not something you gain, it is something you reveal. Revealed through the burning, through the desert, through the absurd courage to stay with what is uncomfortable until it shows you what is on the other side. And on the other side, there is no trophy, no certificate of enlightenment, no applause. There is just peace, simple peace, peace without reason, peace that does not depend on anything being right. But let me be brutally honest with you here. Most people will never experience this, not because they are not capable, but because they are not willing to stay in the discomfort without creating a story about it, willing to feel the emptiness without immediately filling it, willing to lose all the identities they spent their lives building. Because yes, you will lose identities in the desert, the identity of the victim, the identity of the hero, the identity of the person who has it all figured out, the identity of the broken person who needs fixing. All these identities are fuel for the desert. And when they burn, when you finally stop clinging to who you think you are, there is a moment of absolute terror, a moment where you no longer know anything. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you want. You don't know what the purpose of it all is. That is the critical moment. Most people run from this moment. Quickly build a new identity, find a new story, create a new mask. But if you stay, if you have the courage to stay in that non-knowing, something miraculous happens. You discover that you did not need to know. You discover that there is an intelligence operating through you that is infinitely wiser than anything your mind could plan. You discover that when you stop forcing, life flows, not in a magical way where everything you desire appears, but in an organic way where you stop fighting what appears. Jesus came out of the desert and healed people. But how? Not through technique, through presence. A presence so complete that it created space for transformation. Because transformation does not happen through effort. Transformation happens through acceptance. And acceptance does not mean liking. Acceptance means stopping resistance. Now think with me. How many hours of your life have you wasted trying to fix things that were not broken? Trying to fix your personality, trying to fix your emotions, trying to fix your story, as if you were an unfinished project, as if you needed more work before you were finally worthy of peace. The desert destroys that illusion in a brutal way. Because in the desert, you have no tools, no resources, no strategies. You have only you, raw, exposed, real. And in that total exposure, you discover something shocking. You never needed fixing, you only needed to stop believing that you were broken. But that belief is strong. It was built over years, fueled by rejections, strengthened by failures, validated by voices that told you that you were not enough. And now it lives in you as truth, as identity. I am someone who needs to improve. I am someone who hasn't arrived yet. I am someone who is on the path, but not at the destination. Jesus entered the desert carrying some version of that too, because he was human, fully human. He felt doubt. He felt uncertainty. He felt the weight of the mission he was about to embrace. But the 40 days did something no self-help book could do. They burned away the identity of the one who needed to prove something. Because in the desert, who are you going to prove yourself to? The stones? The wind? The merciless sun? In the desert, performance doesn't work. Masks melt. Pretense evaporates. And what remains is so terrifying that most people would build anything, any distraction, any new identity, to avoid looking at it. What remains is nothing. Not nothing in the sense of depressive emptiness, nothing in the sense of pure space. Space where there is finally room for you to simply be. No agenda, no goal, no need to become something. And here is what no one prepares you for. When you finally find that space, the first reaction is not relief. It is terror. Terror because your whole life was built around becoming. Becoming better, becoming more, becoming sufficient. And now suddenly, there is nothing to become. You already are. This should be liberating. And it is. But first, it terrorizes. Because if you are already everything you need to be, what do you do with the rest of your life? What do you do with all the plans? What do you do with all the struggle? Jesus faced that and chose something radical. He let the struggle die. Not the struggle for justice, not the struggle for love, but the internal struggle, the war against himself. He stopped fighting his humanity, stopped fighting his limitations, stopped fighting the fact that he was here, now, in this body, in this moment. And when that internal struggle stopped, something extraordinary happened. Energy that was trapped in resistance became available. Energy that was locked in, I should be different, was released. And from that released energy, compassion was born. Clarity was born, true power was born, not power over others, power with life, power that flows when you stop swimming against the current. So ask again, but feel the question this time. What are you fighting against in this exact moment? Against your body? Against your age? Against your history? Against the fact that you are not yet who you thought you would be by now? All that struggle? It is the desert calling you to stop, to let go, to finally accept that you are exactly who you need to be now, not when you lose weight, not when you earn money, not when you find the perfect relationship, now, with all your imperfections, with all your scars, with all your messy, beautiful humanity. Because here is the truth the desert reveals. Perfection was never the goal. Presence is the goal, and presence has no standards. Presence just is. Jesus did not leave the desert perfect. He left present, fully present. Unconditionally present, present with pain, present with joy, present with uncertainty, present with faith. He did not choose what to feel. He chose how to be with what he felt. And that choice, that singular choice of presence over performance, changed everything. Because when you are present, you stop living in the past, stop regretting, stop blaming yourself, stop carrying dead weight. And when you are present, you stop living in the future, you stop worrying. Stop postponing life. Stop waiting for some magical day to arrive. You finally arrive here. And here, right here, in this imperfect moment, is everything you ever sought. Stop resisting your humanity. Stop resisting your flaws. Stop resisting the fact that life is exactly as it is in this moment. Not as it should be, not as it could be, but as it is. When resistance stops, the energy you were spending fighting becomes available for something completely different. It becomes available for compassion, for creativity, for true connection. It becomes available for life. And here is the final paradox that will fry your mind. When you stop trying to achieve peace, peace reveals it was always here. When you stop trying to become enlightened, you realize you were never in the dark. When you stop trying to escape the desert, you realize that the desert is sacred, not despite the suffering, because of the suffering. Because suffering is the only teacher honest enough to show you where you are still trapped, where you are still identifying with thoughts, where you are still believing the mind's stories. Jesus did not leave the desert unscathed. He left transformed, scarred, awake. And the scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of battles you had the courage to face. They are reminders that you were in the desert and you chose to stay. So when you look at your life now, all the things that went wrong, all the times you felt broken, all the moments where you wanted to give up, you can choose to see differently. You can see each of those moments as invitations. Invitations to the desert. Invitations to presence. Invitations to finally stop running and discover what is waiting when you finally get quiet. Because the silence that burns, it does not burn to destroy you. It burns to reveal what cannot be destroyed. It burns to show you that underneath all the fear, all the doubt, all the confusion, there is something untouched. There is something in you that witnessed every moment of your life without ever being affected by any of them. There is something in you that is total peace, not as a concept but as a lived reality. Jesus knew this. Tolle points to this. All the masters throughout history have pointed to this, but pointing is not enough. You need to walk. You need to enter. You need to feel the hot sand burning your feet. You need to feel the thirst scratching your throat. You need to feel the emptiness threatening to swallow you. And then you need to do the bravest thing a human being can do. You need to stop fighting. Stop fighting the thirst. Stop fighting the emptiness. Stop fighting the desert. And simply be there, completely, totally, without reservations, because it is there, in the heart of what you fear most, that total peace finally reveals itself. Not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped running from it. 40 days, 40 nights, or 40 seconds. The time does not matter. What matters is the depth of your willingness to stay. Jesus walked straight into the silence that burns, and he came out transformed. Not by magic, by surrender. The question that keeps echoing, the question only you can answer, is simple. Are you ready to stop running? Your desert is waiting. It always was. Not out there. Not at some spiritual retreat. Not when your life finally gets better. Here. Now. In this moment. In the space between your thoughts. In the emptiness you try to fill. In the silence you cover with noise. That is where the 40 days await you. That is where total peace is hidden. Not on the other side of the desert. Inside it.